Welcome to our Film Market Insights talk in a long-standing cooperation and partnership of the Berlinale and the Frankfurter Buchmesse. Our goal with our book-to-film program is to build bridges between the book and the film industries. Our aim is to provide a forum for film rights, for handling film rights, where publishers and literary agents can get in contact with film producers in various formats and to learn more about each other's work. And this following talk is part of this cooperation. And right after the Frankfurt Book Fair, at the end of October, we will send out our next call for book submissions. Then publishers and agencies from all over the world can apply with books for our program, which will take place during the Berlinale in February next year.
Great.
And now we are looking forward to an exciting talk. Many thanks to our moderator, Syd, and our speakers, Noemi, Jeff, and Raymond. Back to Hannah. Thank you.
Thanks, Henning, and thank you for all your work helping to put this panel together. It's really great to have different regions of the film industry represented here. So I'm going to welcome Syd onto the stage. Syd is probably a familiar face to many of you if you've been involved in Frankfurt programming, and she is going to moderate this fantastic panel. Syd, do you want to introduce yourself while we get the rest of our panelists up onto the stage?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for this. Yes, I'd be happy to introduce myself. I'm Syd Atlas. I'm author of a fantastic book in German called Das Jahr ohne Worte, 5 Seasons of Love. I'm also a coach working with people who want to tell their stories in corporate or in normal life, and that people will listen, and communication is my passion. I'm really happy to be here with all of you. And in thinking about today, I was thinking about the quality of conversation and how much the amount of time influences the quality of the conversation. And I think we've all experienced where endless talks go on and little is said. Today, we have the challenge and hope to do the opposite in a short amount of time. We definitely have the quality of our experts here. Great to see you. I know Jeff, but I'm happy to meet you digitally, Raymond and Noemi, and glad to have you here for this short amount of time. I'm going to just go around and we'll start with Noemi, then Raymond, then Jeff. Just tell us briefly who you are and what are you witnessing in your part of the world as to current developments that are happening. So Noemi, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Syd, and nice to meet you all. My name is Noemi Ferrer. I'm the executive director at DR Sales, which is the sales agency embedded in the Danish public broadcaster Danmarks Radio. We sell programs that are produced within Danmarks Radio. You might actually know some of them for those who watch TV series such as Killing or Borgen, but also recently documentaries such as The Mole. But we also acquire programs from producers within the Nordic countries, and both like Norwegian productions, Swedish productions, Icelandic productions. I think you can watch Valhalla Murders right now on Netflix. My background, just because I might be sounding like a horrible salesperson, but I actually have been working all around the film industry, in distribution, in Germany, in funding. So funding feature films, documentaries, animation, both in Ireland, in France, and in Denmark. And I've also worked in production for Centropa, the production company of Lars von Trier. If I should say what is happening right now, it is crazy times. It is a bit like the bonanza times. It's like El Dorado. It's like we are talking the Wild West in the kind of 19th century when everybody in America was going for the gold fields. That's what's happening right now. We have huge competition here in Northern Europe, but I think it also applies to the other parts of Europe in terms of streamers, private broadcasters, and public broadcasters all competing with each other, particularly the streamers coming in with huge amounts of financing to put into content. And at the same time, competing with each other in territories. In ours, it is because we have broadband more or less all around the Nordic countries. I think the broadband is something like 95 penetration or so. So everybody watches content. And this is just meaning right now that there is a demand on our creatives and our production teams that is huge. And you can imagine what that leads to. There is a dire need of more writers, of more content, of more directors, and it's putting a huge pressure on the film industries in all the countries to actually be able to deliver all the content that's provided. And the focus is so much on TV right now that if you're coming from a film funding background, you actually wonder what's going to happen to high quality films. But that was it in a nutshell.
Okay, great. So Raymond, let's hear from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what things are different, what things are the same.
Sure, yeah. My name is Raymond Phathanavirangoon, and I'm currently based in Bangkok. And I've been in the film industry for about nearly 20 years. I basically started out working at film festivals. I was a film programmer for festivals such as Toronto International Film Festival. I was also the Asian delegate for Cannes Critics Week. I worked for Hong Kong International Film Festival. I also used to work for a sales agent called Fortissimo Films, and I'm not sure if Jeffrey Sharp remembered, we worked on the Hart Sharp collection, and we emailed each other, but we've never met before. But that was like about, 16 plus years ago, I think.
You just bring people together. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And since then, I've also produced about a number of films. They've all been to like Cannes, Berlin, Venice. I've done 2 adaptations. They were both in the Berlinale panorama, and both were also Thailand's official entry to the Best International Film Oscar. And I also run a script lab right now called SEAFIC for Southeast Asian filmmakers. And the interesting thing about Asia in general is that, similar to what Noemi said, so many things are, gearing towards, TV series and also even online series and, web series that the strange thing is it's actually affected, book adaptations in a different way, where actually a lot of adaptations are now happening from web comics and online fanfics. And it's become, there's actually less and less book adaptations now because the industry, especially in Southeast Asia, they tend to gear towards really young audiences, especially in really big burgeoning countries like Indonesia, which is they have like 280 million people, and they tend to be really young. So a lot of films and a lot of TV series are actually like adaptations of online web series and comics and fanfics, which is really, really interesting. And, even in places like, say Japan, of course, they have a long-standing adaptation of like manga and things like that. And of course, you have the high-end stuff, like, for example, Ryusuke Hamaguchi just did an adaptation of Haruki Murakami's film, and it's called Drive My Car, and won in Cannes. So there are those kinds of like high-profile films still being made in places like China and Taiwan and Hong Kong. But in general, things are really gearing towards really young audiences, and that's a really big thing.
Maybe we'll just go back to you, Noemi. What would be your number one tip to the literary agents and book publishers who are listening in of how they should make contacts in the film world, in your world?
I think there is several ways to contact the really important players. It's on one hand, just simply watch who in the Nordic countries is actually currently producing series. And there, I will not say any names because people can research that themselves, but there are some really big companies that are producing content for the streamers, Netflix, HBO, and Nent, which is a streamer up here in the Nordic countries, is expanding big time right now around the world. So I think it's looking at those and then getting in touch with them and proposing material if there is any material, any adaptations that could be interesting. And crime is still very hot up here, so this would be probably a very big focus. At the same time, it's very interesting, Jeffrey, what you're saying, because young adult entertainment is really important right now as well. And so we don't only see the big budget bestsellers being adapted, like I was thinking about The Fault of Our Stars, because we've just been selling an adaptation of a very small novel that also came out in Germany by DTV. That was called Die allerbeste Zeit meines Lebens, by a Danish-Norwegian author. So it is also just simply looking into content that's quickly adaptable, and maybe also leaving out the highbrow all the time when we see what happened with Bridgerton and Netflix. So I think it's more really identify who's around and talk to the streamers themselves, because very often it's also bring an idea to them and they already have their established partners. But this would be the two ways to go.
Super. And now Jeff is back and unfrozen. So Jeff, tell us and the audience listening in who you are briefly, and what are you witnessing in your part of the world? What are like the hot trends happening right now, the hot material?
Sure, I will. And just thanks for having me here. It's great to, I'm super interested to hear what everyone has to say. Noemi, Raymond, I think Asia is definitely where the future is in terms of adaptation and cross-platform storytelling. So Sid and I spent some time over in China together, and I think we share kind of a fascination with all things Asia. So just briefly, I'm Jeff Sharp, independent film producer based here in the US. I have a long history with Frankfurt going back to my days as a publisher. I founded a digital publishing company in 2009 called Open Road Integrated Media, which was in many ways inspired by my time at Frankfurt Book Fair and Berlinale as well, looking at various models for adapting IP from primarily books to film and TV. My film work goes back about, as Raymond was pointing out, about 25 years, going back to films like You Can Count on Me and Boys Don't Cry, like kind of early American independent films. But very quickly as an independent film producer, I recognized, and particularly a creative independent film producer, that I needed to really establish relationships with publishers and with agents and scouts, and really find a reliable pathway, pipeline from content to our modest development slate into feature film and TV. And as an independent film producer, I witnessed that books would go to market, frontlist titles would sell, and then there would be midlist and backlist titles that wouldn't sell, but there was no real means to discover those properties. So that was what led me to a relationship with HarperCollins Publishers, 2007, 2008, establishing a collaborative relationship with the editorial team there as projects came in, looking at those for potential as film and TV properties. And then, of course, as I said, that led to Open Road Integrated Media, which I co-founded with HarperCollins CEO Jane Friedman. And Open Road was this model where we were acquiring primarily backlist titles for digital ebook rights, but at the same time optioning film and TV rights when and if those were available. So as we were looking at great old backlist titles, some of those would be, Pat Conroy and William Styron and great old kind of American novelists. I continue to be obsessed with backlist titles, but also books that don't necessarily sell on the first go around when agents are taking them out to Hollywood. And Noemi, you were speaking about the streamers, and there's this very, very hot market and for acquisition, but yet those great character-based titles that independent film producers love are oftentimes overlooked. And so my particular obsession is finding those titles and identifying them. And so, for instance, I have a project right now called The Last Chinese Chef. It's a book that is certainly backlist. It's been in publication for over a decade, but it's about China and it's about food. And those are two very hot topics right now. And so I waited patiently for the rights to open up and recently optioned those, and I'm developing that now with writer-director Johnny Ma, who I actually met at Berlinale. So anyway, that's my life as an independent film producer. And then quickly, I'll just say I'm executive director of the Gotham Film and Media Institute here in New York. It's a job I've had for 3 years. We're the leading independent storytelling nonprofit in the US membership. Certainly we've been around for 42 years.
Jeff, I'm going to just interrupt just because our time is so limited.
Oh yeah, please. Anyway, that's what I'm doing.
What's you're doing so much, and everyone should contact Jeff and look him up, and tell me what are the trends you're seeing in the US right now when it comes to, the market. Are there anything really hot right now? Where's the
audio. I think audio is the great kind of interstitial space between printed and film and TV. And we just wrapped up Gotham Week, which is a week-long series of meetings and panels here in New York City, formerly known as IFP Week. And so recently we added audio and publishing to the film and TV conference and market. And so what we're seeing now is, either publishers acquiring rights from podcasts for publication, or the opposite, where podcast creators are optioning from printed work for audio, and then you see film and TV adapting. So audio is this kind of fascinating interstitial space. I think it's very promising for those backlist, midlist, kind of titles that I'm obsessed with, but also for independent filmmakers. It provides a way to develop modestly and prospect and find your audience before you then go on and finance for feature film and TV. So anyway.
Great. Raymond, can you give, Noemi gave her number one tip. What's your number one tip for literary agents and publishers who want to make film contacts in China? Well, how do they go about doing that?
Well, I'll be very honest. I'm not really in a Chinese market, because the Chinese market is extremely different from the rest of East Asia because of
then let's do East
political
Asian.
reasons. There's a lot of things that's going on in China that makes it very difficult right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk too much about this because it's a bit sensitive, because I do have a lot of friends who are trying to adapt things, projects into movies and films, and they've been basically like blocked because of political reasons right now. Things are not particularly rosy right now, but I don't want to get into that too much.
So let's talk where it's rosy. Where is it rosy, and
Well, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of focus now in Southeast Asia, partly because of what is going on in China, due to a lot of the, the geopolitical situation, including a lot of the Chinese companies like iQIYI and Tencent. They're all coming to Southeast Asia because it's a huge market with 600, 700 million people. And it's a very young market. And it's really, it's a lot more, accessible internationally. And they have a lot less barriers also in terms of a lot of these rules and regulations. So a lot of the streamers, including really big companies like CJ International, who've been investing a ton in markets like Indonesia and Vietnam, and I think that's where a lot of the action's happening. So and of course, just a recent adaptation is Vengeance Mine, All Others Pay Cash by Indonesian author Eka Kurniawan, and it's been adapted by a director called Edwin. It just won the Golden Leopard in Locarno, for example. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities in Southeast Asia for those kinds of adaptations. Like I said, the market in Asia is so different. Like in Thailand and the Philippines, they're so into boys' love materials right now, which is all about young, young boys who fall in love, LGBT, and it's popular among a huge swath of population, especially women. It's a very interesting market. That's very
interesting,
different. Yeah, but there's no real mechanism right now in terms of, literary agents. Usually, when I do my adaptations, or most of the people that I know, they contacted the authors directly because it's a bit fragmented. There's nothing, there's not a lot of publishers in the area still, but we'll see. There's a lot of interest in the area, so we don't know.
Raymond, I just have to jump. I just optioned I just ordered the first Boys Love translation, which is coming out in December. I'm very eager to see what it's all about.
Nice.
Jeff, what is your advice for literary agents and publishers who want to contact film people in the US? It seems that there's a lot of, not like by Raymond, there's a lot of agents, and how do they make those contacts?
Yeah, I think agents have enormous amount of bandwidth issues because they have a lot on their plate. But I recommend, markets like ours in the US, which is pretty unique, Gotham Week, in that publishers can interact and agents can interact with folks that are optioning and looking for new content. I think you kind of get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of those kind of opportunities to meet a lot of people within a very short period of time. And now in the virtual world, of course, it's a lot easier to make those introductions. And I was fine. I was just at Venice, and I participated in their publishing sidebar a few weeks ago. And I always find it's really helpful when an agent, really thinks about a producer in advance and goes through their list and really curates and kind of finds 1, 2, 3 titles that they think that producer will look at. And, they look at where that producer is working, what studio deals they have. Are they working with Netflix or studios, and what titles would work for them? And one publisher did that for me. And it made our meeting so efficient and so lovely, and really inspired me to actually dig down and look at their work. It's very challenging for a producer to go through an entire publishing catalog and find a needle in a haystack. And it really helps to have an agent who's super motivated and focused in that way.
Since we are coming to a close very soon, I love to end on hope, because I think hope is what gets us up every morning, gets us out of the door every day. What gives you hope in your world and what you're doing, that you have the feeling that because of all the craziness that's been happening in their lives with the pandemic and everything else, that you think something new is happening that's good and better, and that makes you feel joyful? Noemi, do you want to start? And then we'll do Jeff and then Raymond to change it up a little bit. So Noemi, what gives you hope?
Well, I think it's never been, I've never seen it like this, such an overheated market for content, which of course is good. At the same time, when you see, what is adapted, there is a lot of the bestsellers. And right now, at least here in Scandinavia, there is a focus on certain genres. What gives me hope is that, again, maybe I'm more talking in the filmmakers' ways, but that a lot of the directors that had been jumping on making and adapting the big TV series and thought it was the best of the best because they would earn so much money, some of them are finding their ways back to telling really great stories for the big screen, for the cinema. And there is this two-way street, which is like really strong stories that are able to be told within the 90 minutes to whatever, 150 if we talk about really big directors. And then there is a TV series that uses a totally different spectrum of being able to delve into it. And I just really like it to be this two-way street where it could go one way and the other, and it doesn't end up in one street, which is on the small screen. But yeah, that gives me hope.
Super. Okay, Jeff, what gives you hope?
Yeah, I find that just the increased globalization of the market, and American audiences, are opening up, and because of the streamers, really, taking more of a interest in exploring international film and television. My son is obsessed with manga and is reading, and there's a profusion of anime now available on the major streaming platforms. And so I see certainly newer generations, younger generations really being very kind of agnostic in terms of where they're looking for content. And so I think that makes collaboration on this level really exciting, because we just have a lot more to work with in terms of how we tell our stories.
Yeah, and that there's so many more stories out there to tell. Raymond, tell us what gives you hope.
I think that I'm really hopeful about the next generation, the new generation of filmmakers coming out from East Asia. I mean, you mentioned Johnny Ma, who's actually a friend of mine, but there are just so many of them, and they're going on to make really amazing things. Like there's a young Indonesian female director who's now directing a film with Jessica Alba, and she's an art house director who was in Cannes before. So, there's a lot of opportunities where a lot of young filmmakers are also trying different things. And I think the markets are also going to change, because yes, there is a propensity towards certain genres, like for example, like the romance or the horrors or like even those boys love. But I think as the audience, grows hungrier and more interested in watching things, I think there are appetite for different genres and different topics, and especially more sophisticated topics. And I think that people will go back to the cinemas because I think people are sick and tired of watching things at home. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is the comfort at home, and then one realizes there's a longing of being together, experiencing something. And I too hope that everyone goes back to the cinema and everyone keeps reading books and keeping up hope. So thank you all very much, you wonderful panelists. And anything that you need to add in, Hannah, here?
I do have a question. It's very practical level. It seems that the information that filmmakers use to judge a project might be different than what publishers pitch to each other in terms of selling rights. Is there information from publishers about their titles or a particular way that they pitch their titles to you that would be particularly helpful for you in making a decision?
If I can, I mean, I think yes, absolutely. I think it's not so much the metrics and the platforms and the, you know, those tools that publishers use when they're making a decision about acquiring something for publication. It's much more on the touchy-feely side. You know, how can you convey something that feels kind of really, really compelling and urgent and original? Filmmakers really dig that, and if there's a way to convey that, I think that's very effective.
Noemi and Raymond, do you guys have any thoughts about this? Are you getting the information you need when a publisher pitches the books to you, or is there something that you are missing?
I think just from the perspective I used to have before when I was working more like in financing, I think there's something that is always about how is this actually financeable and how can you actually adapt something that is a book into either the small screen or the big screen. And it's really, I know it sounds really banal, but it can be a fantastic book traveling around the world. And it's just like, you know, even like in VFX times and so on, it's just not feasible. Also a book that is very lyrical, like where's the action, or where's the drama? And just thinking like cinematic ways. And I think that sometimes that translation does not always happen, neither the economic production-wise one, nor we're talking about drama in storytelling. Doesn't seem always we don't seem to be speaking the same language, maybe.
Yeah. Raymond, do you have any quick final thoughts?
Well, you know, like I mentioned, the system here is quite different in that, you know, we don't really have literary agents and things. But what's happening a lot now are, you know, other producers from other countries who are interested in working with Southeast Asian or Asian filmmakers, and then they contact people like me to basically try to make, you know, for me to also, you know, produce it with them, but also to look for certain directors that I may find to be suitable for the project. So I have been actually given a number of books and things like that, and to really give a lot of these kinds of feedback as to whether this is suitable. You know, a lot of these books obviously have certain, you know, Asian content, and they're kind of like asking for my opinion. Well, does this make sense in terms of the Asian perspective? Because obviously they don't want to be you know, culturally insensitive and things like that. So a lot of times that does come to my desk, and you know, I do make those kinds of recommendations and introductions as well. So yeah, it's happening more organically than through agents here in our region, I think.
Thank you all for joining us. Sid, you did a great job moderating, and we really appreciate all the insights you guys shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you.